Greetings. In this first presentation, I'm going to simply give you some insights based on my own teaching experience and working with students who've taken Chem 1020 here at UNE before. So one of the things that the course is advertised as, and truly is one where you can work at your own pace. Given our modern complex lives with work, family responsibilities, and many other activities that are occupying our time, it's frequently not reasonable to pursue your professional goals by taking a class in a traditional setting on a campus where the times are fixed and fairly rigid for meeting. So one of the great advantages of this course, and it's designed to truly fulfill that, is that you can work at your own pace. Now, that comes with a darker side, namely that it puts a great deal more responsibility on you personally to set the pace that's going to allow you to both complete the course at the absolute end date and achieve, say, both the learning objectives and the grade that you would like to receive. So truly, there are no deadlines for completing the assignments other than the implacably inflexible endpoint at the 16th week. So the issue with that is it creates a temptation sometimes to allow other things to intrude upon the study time that you might need, and then that you say, well, I can make up later, or I can work faster, and so on. The truth is that the more you push things off, then later on you will have less time to complete the course effectively, and then you will end up rushing and perhaps not achieve the goals that you would like. When the end of the course comes, any assignment that hasn't been completed is assigned a 0. So what does it mean then to, in terms of time, be taking a 3-credit class here online? In a traditional setting on campus, a 3-hour class, first of all, means that you're meeting with the instructor and other students for the equivalent of 3 hours per week. On top of that, the usual understanding is that for every hour in class, a student should be expecting to spend 3 hours outside on working independently. So for a 3-credit class, that would be 9 additional hours. What this means in general, and is certainly true of my experience working with students here at UNE, we're talking about spending minimally between 10, 12, and 15 hours a week on the course content. Now, having said that, not everyone needs the same amount of time. It depends partly on your ability to concentrate, your past experience learning independently, your ability to work with science topics, and all manners of the personal way that our individual brains work. But that's a pretty good rule of thumb. Now, the issue is, it's not a matter of watching the clock, because the issue is, how long does it take to, first of all, complete the assignment to the level that you are attaining both the content learning that you desire and the level of performance, meaning A, B, C. I'm assuming no one wants to pay to take this class and earn a D or an F. So the issue is spending the time effectively. Some weeks, some chapters will take perhaps not as much time as others. Some of them are more intense, and some you may find more difficult. So, if a person finishes up the work for that particular chapter or unit more quickly, then that could buy you some time for pausing or to work and get ahead. So the issue is then, how should you distribute those hours that you are going to spend? For example, should you anticipate being able to, say, go all out for a 10, 12-hour stretch one day a week? Well, cognitive psychology and learning theory research shows us that the way the human brain works is that new information is processed in the short-term memory and then needs to take some time to be moved into the longer-term memory for recall and being able to use it later. And so what research has shown, that is, if you're going to, say, spend 10 hours on a learning task, it is far more effective that 5 sessions of 2 hours each be spent rather than one long block of 10 hours. The reason is, first of all, your ability to focus wanes over 10 hours. And secondly, the repeated sessions allow time for review and renewal to help rewire your synapses in the brain, and you become more effective. So in general, it may be possible to cram or go on a study binge, say, right before a test, and that material is accessible for a short period of time. But then most likely it evaporates or disappears from your long-term memory. And where that ends up being hurtful is, for example, in the fact of this course, it is one where each successive topic often builds on something that goes before it, and the final in the course is cumulative. So if every test is treated as an episode of its own, then when you get back to something later that depends on that and you don't have a firm recall of it, you're not going to be as successful as you would like. All right, so how do we start? There is a schedule in the syllabus that lays out the work over the span of 16 weeks. If you study that, you'll see that every week doesn't have new content presented. There are about 3 weeks where you can expect to be scheduled to be able to catch up, or have for review time, or if you are very well planned, get ahead, or even take a pause. So bear that in mind. The temptation, as I said earlier, is to go a little bit too slow initially and then be caught and requiring you to spend more time working fast at the end of the term and not achieve as high a level of learning or performance as you might like. So let's bring this down a little bit more practically. The audience for this course is indicated by, first of all, the fact that it's called Organic Chemistry 1. That means it's an intro level course. It's inside of the SPHP program, the Science Prerequisites for Health Professionals, and that is located inside the College of Graduate and Professional Studies at UNE. So what that means, first of all, is the course is intended to be for people that may be changing careers or need to acquire some specific requirement background in science that is needed for admission and application to a health program, whether that be nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and other medical professional levels. The thing that you need to do, and I hope have already done, is to check that this particular course does indeed meet the application and admission requirements for the program you may be thinking about applying to. Other students also take the class. Sometimes typical undergraduate students only need a brief introduction to organic chemistry to meet a major in an entirely different field. And so again, the issue is, does this course get accepted for transfer by your own institution? So if you haven't done these kind of checks already, please do that very soon. It would give you the opportunity to withdraw from the course long before you've had to spend a lot of work and money to perhaps no academic advantage. Learning is there, yes, but it may not apply to the academic professional goals that you have in mind. A short course, such as the textbook calls it, is meant to be a survey, meaning it provides the core principle information about the field, but not at a level of depth or breadth that would be ordinarily found in a course for majors. So there are many people that, for example, chemistry majors or biochemistry majors would be ordinarily taking a 2-semester science majors organic chemistry course. And typically, this particular one wouldn't meet those students' academic objectives. On the other hand, there are different kinds of short courses. Some take 1 semester, some take 2. Our course covers chapters 1 through 11 in the Hart textbook. Now, if you look at that book, you'll see it covers a lot more topics. Indeed, it covers the topics in an abbreviated form that are covered in a sophomore 2-semester organic course. We are covering the first 11, which have the core background for someone to have familiarity enough to take on, say, again, an introductory course in biochemistry, or at least have broad conceptual understanding of the topic of organic chemistry. Then, within that textbook, even for the 11 chapters that Chem 1020 covers, not all of that material is applicable to what we're doing here at UNE. So it's very important to look at the syllabus, and on my webpage under Stuff from Doc Mac for each week, I have the explicit course objectives for each chapter and what particular sections. So we have to get the right chapters 1 through 11. Then within those chapters, there may be sections we're not covering at all. And then sections, the objectives are telling you what terms, knowledge, and skills you need to be able to demonstrate on the quizzes and exams. That helps you focus correctly. You don't want to take your precious time and spend it on stressing out about things that we may not even find to be worth examining you on. Now, I'm not against learning by any means. The issue is here, how you be most effective. So you want to cover the material that you're going to be assessed on. That's the issue. All right. Turning to the issue of the content, on Blackboard Pages, under each learning module, they're set up for the weeks in the term. And then on those pages again, it has various things. It tells you what chapter and what the broad topic is. There's an introductory lecture presentation, typically from some person in the past who taught at UNE. And then there are supplemental materials, links to the laboratory exercise for that week if you're taking the lab, and then the quiz, and or if it's an exam week, the link for doing that as well. That opening lecture that you see there is generally given very quickly and tersely, and both comments from former students in this class as well as my own professional judgment is it is only going to serve to be indicative of the kinds of things that you're going to focus on in the chapter. It's not especially good for picking up, learning the content. That has to be dealt with more individually. And so the primary source of material for this course is indeed the textbook. That's what we look at. That's what we use to make up the exams. When you go to read the textbook, of course, you can't look at it like a novel. It's fairly technical material. That means it has to be processed more slowly. It is, because it's condensed, something that you can judge how significant in the section and chapter it is by the amount of space dedicated to it. Some things only have 1 or 2 sentences in passing, and that may be significant, but something is vastly more important if paragraphs and diagrams and figures are dedicated to the exposition of the topic. In addition, simply looking and reading and going, aha, isn't going to be quite the best way to go about learning the material. Certainly gaining a first overview or perusal, the reading alone should be sufficient to that purpose. And having said that, other people are better sometimes learning by listening to, say, podcasts or lectures or looking at videos. All of those have their place. But again, whatever other sources that you get about the material, they need to be referred back to what it is that is in the textbook and the list of objectives that you need to acquire as your own understanding. When you go to work with the textbook, I recommend strongly that you get yourself a notebook, whether it's bound or spiral or loose leaf sheets that you can put into a binder. And as you go through each section, use paper and a writing instrument to make some notes. My own experience and that of other students is that if you can put things in your own words, you're going to have a better retention and recall of that information, as well as a better understanding. And again, that goes back to learning theory. The more sensory inputs that you're using collectively to learn something, the more of an imprint you're making it onto your memory. Now again, there are other sources of information about the content provided or accessible. There are links, for example, on the content pages to YouTube videos, Khan Academy, and so on. And of course, you can Google things very easily. The issue is many of these external materials are not curated with you taking this course in mind. And so when you do look at some external materials, first of all, they may be not always completely accurate, or because they're just about organic chemistry, they may be at a greater depth of detail or expanse of detail than we're actually covering in the course. So it takes some care to not become either made to think that you need to know something more deeply than we're asking about here, or even if the topic is important or not. I would suggest, first of all, that you might want to look at the resources that I've posted for you. I have picked them and curated and checked them so that they are accurate and actually reflective of the level of content that we are asking you to learn and be examined on in this course. Any professional, whether they are, say, an athlete, a plumber, an electrician, a nurse, doctor, or a world-famous researcher, any of those experts aren't born. They are made, and what makes someone an expert is practice, practice, and practice. Professional athletes work hours upon hours to get their skills down before they ever go on to the field of play and competition. In the same way, in becoming a medical health professional person, a large part of the programs involve clinical practice. Expert lawyers, plumbers, tradespeople, and scientists all get their level of expertise by frequently doing the same thing and learning more and more effective ways to carry that out. If you've ever had a plumber or an electrician or other skilled tradesperson do work for you, and you look at what they've done, you'll say, well, that looks pretty easy. And in fact, you can find information about how to fix a sink or wire a switch or so on. And you may attempt that. And then you discover that it's not as easy nor as quick as the professional can do it because you lack the experience and practice. In the same way, while we're not trying to make you an expert at chemistry in this course, we get to be more knowledgeable and confident of what we've learned by having a feedback loop set up. And that's where doing practice problems and having our answers validated by a reference are very important. They end up telling us, okay, you're on the right track or something's not correct. So in the textbook, inside the sections that you're reading, you will find that there are questions that ask you to apply the knowledge just presented. And when you get that question done correctly, then that means for the short term, you have understood the point being made up to then. At the end of the chapter, there are additional problems that combine things from out the chapter. And you can, again, work those problems and check your answers against the solutions manual. I should point out, solutions manual is often not written by the authors and sometimes does unfortunately have some mistakes in it. So please also be in the habit of looking on the Blackboard page to check out corrections to the solutions manual. As we faculty discover those, we enter the corrections there so that you're not misled. Also, there are many more additional problems given in the chapter than we're assigning. Some of them may be more involved or on a subject focus level that we're not using in the course. I would encourage you instead then to look at the supplemental materials I've posted. There are tutorials, worksheets, and old exam questions for practice there, some of them that do give feedback to you. So those kinds of assessments and supplements are going to be quite useful to you as you go forward. And then, while you're keeping notes in your record there of what's gone on in the reading and learning, you might indicate what objectives in that section were met by the content that you just went over. And two kinds of things come up. You might want to get in the habit of writing down things I have questions about. That may be about the content and presentation itself in the textbook, or about problems, and even when you see the answer is X given, you don't know how to figure out why that should be the case. Those are all excellent opportunities and indicators that you want to take advantage of me. My job, again, is primarily to be like a learning coach or learning assistant. So please do use the message function in Blackboard, or visit me at the weekly conference hour is posted, or ask for an appointment and we'll we'll meet together online that way at your convenience. Getting those questions resolved before you go forward is important for two reasons. The content of the course is like a staircase. Each level builds on what was below it. To ascend to the top of the staircase, you have to walk over the lower steps. The content of the class builds upon progressively knowing what was already taught. And certainly, if you go into an exam or quiz without having questions answered, then that will no doubt show itself on a lowered grade. And there's another reason to follow up when you have questions. Sometimes students become concerned about items that are relatively insignificant, and at other times may not attach an appropriate importance to things that are. And so when you check in with someone like myself, then you can have affirmation about whether your concerns are important and should be followed up, or you can let go of them. So I hope this is somewhat of use. And as I said, we'll have some more of these coming. I'll have, it says here, some advice about getting ready for quizzes and tests, and then what you should do after you get your scores back. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much.